It's Thursday, April 11th. On Wednesday, the Arizona legislature started the repeal process for the No Promo Homo law 30 years after it was instituted. The House voted 55 to 5 to repeal the law. The law prohibits students from learning about gay relationships and safe-sex practices for LGBT people in a positive way in sex ed classes, or sometimes even learning about them at all. These laws not only impact the understanding LGBT students have of themselves, but how their peers understand and, by extension, treat them in their classrooms. I sat down with two representatives from 1 in 10, a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving LGBTQ youth and young adults in Arizona, to hear their thoughts on the policy change and how these laws affect children in our state.
So obviously HIV affects everybody, but the history is that it has adversely affected the LGBTQ population a lot more than other populations. And so when we don't teach that history, we're completely erasing a part of a lot of our youth history. And so when they learn about it for the first time here or at other organizations that work with LGBTQ youth, they kind of are surprised because they don't always understand how that's not something that they already know. It's something that has been part of their community and they just don't understand it, why it's not something that they're taught.
Wallace Hudson, a training and program specialist, said that not only are students left confused by this kind of sex ed, but that their identities are erased from all other curricula as a result of this law.
And I think that that's been a consequence of No Promo Homo, is that although it only pertains to sex education, teachers don't always understand that, or they are fearful that it could leak over into other subjects. And so although the statute is under sex education, I talked to a few teachers who don't know that and think that it pertains to all subject matter. So they think that they can't talk about LGBT individuals in history class or English class in a positive light, when actually the statute doesn't affect those subject matters or subject areas. So I think that impacts teachers' ability and comfortability talking about these issues in the classroom, which again leads to students not knowing about it and then increased bullying and isolation and all that.
Mills says that when students don't know how to protect themselves in school through proper HIV prevention education for LGBT students, students are left to learn for themselves the dangers of sex, often putting themselves incidentally in harm's way.
I think it becomes something that they have to learn on their own when they're adults, and that makes it difficult because you go through a situation that you could ultimately prevent from happening. So you turn into an adult, you go into college, and you end up with some type of STI or something else happens, and that's something that can be prevented. That's something that you can learn before you even get to that stage. And so when you have the opportunity to opt out, you're just missing that whole area where you're going to have to learn it at some point anyway. Whether or not you're choosing abstinence, it's something that you're going to have to learn. So it's just pushing it farther back down the line where it really should be at the time when it's most needed.
Despite the pain and confusion this law has created for LGBT youth in Arizona, the repeal leaves activists like Hudson excited for the future and that education in Arizona will finally improve.
I am ecstatic about it. I've worked with a couple organizations, 1 in 10 included, who have hated this law as long as I've been here. I didn't even know this law existed until I moved here a few years ago, and I've seen firsthand in working with teachers how this law impacts their classroom and how it makes teachers fearful to talk about these subjects because they don't understand the law fully. And so I can't even imagine being a teenager in a school in which the teachers are scared to talk about homosexuality. I was fortunate enough to go to a high school where that was something we talked about a lot, and it was very visible, and teachers were not shying away from that, and I totally believe it's because we didn't have something like this.
No one knows what the future of sex ed in Arizona will be, but activists like Mills and Hudson will be on the front line supporting LGBT youth along the way. From the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications, this is Taylor Lane reporting.